Hey now, welcome to the dirty side of the track. It's America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. We have some special guests, Rob. You want to tell everyone who's here?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I still think I probably did the intro better last week, and I should have got the gig permanently. But yeah, never mind. Good to have you back on the Hey Now's chair. Yeah, this week we've got two guests with us. Two people that we've picked up along the way. You'll know them. We've got Rob Reed, who's been a guest a couple of times, and somebody who may have featured more than once on the show, a guy who goes by the mantra of Pit Lane Paul. Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Hey, I'm really good. Just a quick one. The start of the last episode. Rob, I've known you for a while, but please stick to your own job. That was the most atrocious entrance to a show. I nearly turned off. And 20 seconds in,
I wonder how many listeners we actually lost when he's telling everyone about our podcast.
Oh, I know. What is a podcast?
I don't know. I tried to go all Chicago-y, and I'm not known for my accents. And there we go. There's another episode of me not doing accents very well.
Yeah, some people are known for things that are good in life. Some people are known for things that are bad in life. I think we've just discovered your niche right there. You're terrible. Hey now.
Yeah. Okay. That was all you wanted to wanted to stick a knife in, didn't you? Okay, so that's Paul saying hello to everybody. So let's let a quick hello to Rob. Rob, welcome back.
Oh, it's so good to be back. Thanks, guys.
We are excited you both are here. We have a season recap coming up, but before we do, there were a couple small news items that we wanted to hit. Obviously, the big news coming out of the end of the season and then right around the corner was the official word that Daniel Ricciardo is back at Red Bull as the third driver. According to the press release, will assist the team with simulator and test work and carry out commercial duties for the team. Gentlemen, thoughts?
Isn't he really the fourth driver?
Yeah, pretty much.
I think that's true. I think I can't remember who the actual reserve driver is.
Liam Lawson.
Yeah,
Lawson.
Yeah.
Lawson's
right?
the reserve driver. So I read this, that Danny Rick is essentially, if you want somebody to smile and stand next to the PR car, maybe drive it down the streets of Vegas, that's bring on Danny Rick. But I don't know that he gets anywhere near a race next year, does he? Unless like lots of people get ill.
Well, I look from a team perspective to drive straight into being really boring. If you're Red Bull Racing and you have an incident involving Checo or Max, you would, I mean, no offense, you'd probably have to put Danny Rick in just for the experience and whatever has. But yeah, it depends what the contract he signed, obviously. But if you're looking at it from that perspective, it's like, I guess, Alfa Romeo. You know, we got Theo Pourchaire and Robert Kubica on backup, but you would probably more likely put Kubica in the car. But hey, I don't know. That's their business.
Okay, so it's not like a designated necessary hierarchy. So because I've read that as basically Danny Rick's just coming along to be the PR guy, but being designated a reserve driver gives him a chance. Then we could see Danny Rick next year.
Well, you see it when the guys run in FP1 and in FP2. I mean, every race you'll have your reserve driver there at least until Saturday morning. You know, once qualifying's taken place, once qualifying's happened, the reserve driver goes home. So more often than not, especially from our side, your reserve guy will leave on the Saturday evening. It'll more often than not, it'll actually go back to the factory and do simulator work Saturday evening and then Sunday morning, based on what they're doing at the track. So again, purely based on experience that Danny Rick has got, I would find it, it's their business, their contract. But if you were looking at Red Bull Racing, you'd probably want him more involved. But yeah, there we go. Just my opinion.
Yeah, and to your point, Rob, though, from a PR perspective, if there's any team that needs like some good feels in the sport of Formula One, it's Red Bull, and Danny Rick brings that in spades. He's worth his weight in gold just in that for that team. That team just needs more kind of like, happiness and good vibes from the sport, from the fans, because they're certainly not getting it right now.
Well, Checo knows what Max is made of, right?
Yeah, it shows who he really is.
I mean, that came right off the back of the cost cap. I mean, so yes, that's a great point, Rob. That sort of that PR aspect, huge opportunity for Red Bull. Plus, I mean, I think we all agree he's still, at least I would say, still a talented driver. Just the last couple of years weren't his peak, and whatever, the car didn't come to him or whatever it may be. I can't believe he fell off a cliff that fast.
No, well, and we saw it in Mexico. We saw that little, kind of
Soft
Danny
tires
Rick.
going through the
Yeah, he just he needs a 10-second penalty, at the beginning of every race, basically. And then Danny Rick comes alive.
It's a great
So
point.
yeah, we saw it.
Now, you guys, I think both were in Abu Dhabi, correct? I know, Paul, you were. Obviously, you filed your report, and Rob Reed, you were there, yes?
Oh yeah. I got to
And
see Paul in his element. It was awesome.
Yeah,
Now,
you didn't really. So we have a top floor in the hospitality buildings in Abu Dhabi. So you have like the ground floor, which is your engineering and your baseline catering. You have a middle floor, which is like marketing and driver offices. Then you have this top floor, which is outside, and it's sort of like where all the teams have their parties and champagne and all this sort of stuff. And a couple of times Rob messaged me like, where are you? Like, I'm in the team building, and like nowhere, nothing. I can't remember what day it was. Was it the? No, it was race
It was right
day.
before it was right before the race.
Yeah, it's right before the race. You said, "Well, I'm here. Where are you?"
So,
I'm
yeah.
on the roof.
Paul's like, yeah, we're this is kind of embarrassing. Kind of my nature being like new to the paddock and new to having a press pass is like, I don't know where I can go and where I can't go. And I'm not like the type of person that wants to like push the envelope and be like, nope, get the heck out of here. Like, who do you think you are? Like trying to come in here. So like I'd go into the hospitality and I'd only ever go on like the ground floor because the stairs don't look like the place like I'm allowed to go, like up the stairs. Like, so I hadn't visited that part of the hospitality until Paul, of course, said, no, we're on the roof. You got to walk up 2 flights of stairs. And it was like, like, wow, look at this.
I was like completely amazed. So, you didn't know this was here? He was like, no, of course not. And I'm like, what? I
don't know what I'm doing.
Just found the roof. Yeah, no, I just didn't click. It didn't click to me that you wouldn't have known. But yeah.
Paul, you didn't take care of your guest. That's shocking. That is.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I'm like hardly a guest. I'm like the.
Yeah, I was gonna say no. To be completely
I join
honest,
the guests. Yeah,
yeah.
Well,
it's one of those weird things where you just assume people people know what they're doing once, because like you say, Rob's got like a media pass now. So he's not a guest. He's sort of a worker, which is cool as hell. But you then sort of just expect these people to know what they're doing, and yeah, I didn't even think of trying to explain what the protocol. So
there you have it, everyone. Rob Reed does not know what he's doing.
and
he's
actually,
learning fast though.
I'd like to set the bar very low. So next year in Montreal, Rob and I will be there. The Dirty Side will be on location, and we know nothing about anything. So if someone could come say hi to us in our chair at one point, that would be great. And that would make our day. Just as you're running the track and we're sitting there, roasting in the sun, hey guys, and then we'll probably be both wearing shirts that say Rob and Brian or something stupid, but we'll be there.
Yeah, so it's a long way off. Things happen in that time. That's not stress. But no, Montreal, you can't really screw up. It's quite easy. There's a big.
We can screw it up.
Oh yeah, true. There's a big boating lake. There's the paddock in the pit lane, and then you have the hospitality floating on the water out of basically tents. So yeah, you can't get that one too wrong. But yeah, we'll wait and see how you can.
Yeah. How long till Rob Vale's swimming down the St. Lawrence?
Oh, not too long. Right, anything else to hit on news and social then, Brian, before we jump into our season review?
Actually, yes, there is. So I would just highlight the fact that this week, the World Cup started. And I think everybody knows that, right? So we had the opportunity to watch the World Cup, and we had a very exciting time. England played the U.S., and what we saw was, we had a bet. Do you want to talk about the bet, Rob Vale? Tell everyone a little bit about the bet.
Yeah, sure. You came to me and you said, will you give US a 3-goal head start? And I was like, Brian doesn't know anything about this sport, and it's probably highly unlikely that England are even going to win. But yeah, screw it. I'll go along. I'm game. I'll go along. So we said England needed to win. I think if England won by 3 goals, then the tie was considered a victory on my side. And Otherwise, Brian would win, and then I would have to do some kind of forfeit, which I think was to read out some kind of message, wasn't it,
So
Brian?
if you pop over to the Notion right now, Rob, and see
Okay,
what's
where'd you
there,
put it?
it's right under Rob's statement here.
Okay, right. So my statement for losing, because England are rubbish and Gareth Southgate will not play attacking football when he thinks a draw is better, leads me to say, first, it's fitting I lost a soccer bet. It was a riveting 0-0 draw. Talk about a lot of action. 90 minutes plus some random referee time of no one doing anything. Soccer, so great. Second, this is my
Rob,
chance.
You feel this way? Wow, it's a shock.
I do, yeah. Second, this is my chance before I read what Brian has written for me to highlight how lucky I am to have hitched my wagon to his star. He's just an all-round great guy.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
But here's what I really want to say. We all know Max is good, but it's clearly the car why he had such a great year. I mean, come on, if he's in a Mercedes this season, he finishes behind Lewis. And speaking of Lewis, can Team LH get off their high horses? He's got 7 titles, also pretty much all because of his car.
Wow, you feel that way?
He finished further behind George this season than Nicky did, behind George at Williams last season. Nico topped him head-to-head. Jensen topped him head-to-head. It's all the car. I love Mick, but he's just not that good. He had 12 points this season. Lance had 50% points more than Mick. He tied on 12 with Yuki, finished just barely ahead of a rookie in an unreliable car in Zhou. I think he's got talent, but I secretly have a very strong man crush on Mick, and I've let that cloud my judgment. P.S. British drivers are completely overrated in Formula One.
Wow. I didn't see any of that coming.
I'm shocked.
I'm shocked that Brian wrote that, because obviously sometimes behind jest there is truth. So that's the way Brian feels, everyone.
It was a fine line between trying to get you fully canceled and just embarrassed. So I just left it at blaming the car.
I told you I have no embarrassment filter, so I would probably read anything out. But I didn't want to go back over the US game. It was terrible, but well played US. But
that is a super aggressive statement to get him to read out. That is, I disagreed with literally everything in there, including the soccer part at the start. We touched on this. But
I knew he was going to maybe say soccer, and I was going to change it, but I thought, no, bet's a bet. I got to read out exactly as he wrote it. So,
I mean, if I could watch something for 90 plus minutes, time totally determined by a person running around for a while, and watch a 0-0, as we would call it here in the States, tie. Yeah, that's exciting. Good.
to be honest with you, I was at the Alfa Romeo end of season. It wasn't a Christmas party; it was an end of season party, and so I didn't see any of the game. During the game, they were doing speeches on stage, which were all completely in German, which is completely fine because, well, Switzerland, you'd say German, Swiss, whatever, but it was a foreign language. But whatever happened, the language I didn't understand, and I believe it was still a lot more fun than watching that game. So, yeah, I'm more than happy to have missed out, and well done to the USA. It's a great result for you guys, but you'll be going home in a few days' time, so it doesn't matter.
Wait, hold on. Would you like to put a bet on the Iran game with me?
Yes.
All right. Well, let's we'll trade some WhatsApps and figure out what the stakes are. Sound good?
Exactly. Rob,
Brian, zero football knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is exactly the same way I lost all my money betting on F1 this year, not knowing what I was doing. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about the season.
Come on.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So,
enough of that.
Moving to like a recap of 2022, and instead of just doing a bunch of stats and facts, Rob Reed and Paul, we'd love to get your thoughts on, some highlights or favorite moments from the season, and then we'll kind of flow into any lowlights or things you thought were the worst moments. So whichever one of you two would love to go first, our guests are always more than welcome to start.
I'd love to hand over to Mr. Rob Reed.
Well, first of all, congratulations to Alfa Romeo on P6 in the Constructors. I think
Yes.
that was a solid result for the team. Started out like really strong. Valtteri scored, I think actually he was tied for points for all Sauber drivers, right? Was that the stat coming out of Abu Dhabi? If he had scored points in Abu Dhabi, he would have had the record for Sauber drivers.
Yes, there was a lot. So actually, it was a really weird weekend. So we didn't realize it was his 200th race as well, I think. And yeah, there was something on points if he would have got Yeah, there was a lot going around. To be honest with you, it's a weird thing you do shut most of that out, but it's a great achievement for the team, and you could see how much it actually meant to them. So yeah, I totally agree. Fair play.
Robert,
They had a good year.
if I could add on top of that, not only was it sixth in the constructors, it was actually tied on points with Aston Martin, but the tiebreak was Valtteri's fifth at Imola, which is the highest finish for either driver of both teams. So Valtteri had a ton of points, and that fifth at Imola broke the tie, gave Alfa Romeo sixth place. So that's a great point for you. Sorry, back to you, sir.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I have to say, after the race in Abu Dhabi, I went out onto the pit lane, and that was an experience. That was incredible. Like that was, it was like a Super Bowl. Going out in the field after the Super Bowl, but like bigger than a Super Bowl. It's like the end of the season, and all the teams, they got what they wanted, celebrating. Alfa Romeo being one, like they were really psyched on that P6, like you said, it was like down to the wire. And I mean, man, like, and then the fireworks are going off, and the cars are doing donuts, like, just over the pit wall. I mean, like that was incredible for me. I mean, just like a massive highlight.
I'm sorry, we might need to stop recording and cancel today's episode on account of my massive amount of jealousy.
Yeah, he's right actually, because like it's the paddock, once the flag drops, sort of turns into this big communal party. Obviously, teams have still got a lot of work to do, even though the test is coming. There's no backup, but they've got, they've still got the cars coming back from the race to like get ready for the test, or at least take the race components off them. But it's one of the most amazing places you can be in F1. Is the final race about like 20 minutes after the checkered flag, once the podium's done. And like, Rob, you're right. Everyone's just pied. Everyone's having beers. It's such a nice feeling to know that you're done. And yeah, teams are celebrating. People are congratulating each other. It's a magical place to be.
Well, being as you've taken the mic there, Paul, what's your personal highlight of the season?
I mean, to be honest with you, there's quite a few. Obviously, you naturally say the bits for Valtteri. I think weirdly, my proudest bits are negative as well. Is when we first went to Maranello with the shakedown at the start of the year, the first time we'd ever really seen the Alfa Romeo, and we were stood in the pit lane and looking as a car went past. We saw this strange bouncing thing that the car was doing, and I'm like, what the hell is this thing doing? And then the next lap round, it come back, it was bouncing. And like Valtteri's on the road, you go like, there's something weird going on with the car. And in the end, it ripped the floor apart. And we were like, we were quite low. We sort of drove back to Monaco that night, and chatting in the car like, oh god, like what, that's really bad, especially with a cost cap where you can destroy a floor on the very first run that the car's done. And it was like, this could be a bad year. And, I kind of getting back and was quite down about things, but then went to the pub and there's a couple of the Aston Martin Mercedes guys there. So how's your shakedown? They were like, oh, God, it's really strange. Like when the car's on the straight, it does this weird bouncing thing. We're like, oh, we had that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we destroyed the floor. And like, and then a couple of the Williams guys, like, how was shakedown for you guys? Man, it's really weird. The car does this strange. And it was sort of like it's actually quite proud so that everyone's having this problem with this, what we now call porpoising. And it was, you go from a stage where you think it's just us and this is a big problem to knowing everyone's got it. So as a proud moment for the season, I think that was bizarrely one of them, to realize that the new regulations have caught a lot of people out, and it was going to be tricky to see how people got over it. But I think it was good that everyone was in the same book, because it was quite a low point at the start to going into quite a high point. But yeah, look, personally, Alfa Romeo getting sixth place, Valtteri having let's say a pretty good season. It could have gone better in the middle, but yeah, we're sort of quite happy, and it gives the team kick for next year, which is only ever a positive. So yeah, that would be mine as well.
Going round the circle then, Brian. What about yourself, sir?
couple things. One real fast. You guys know I love stats. There weren't a ton of first-time winners and first-time pole sitters. Well, actually, there were more pole sitters than winners, but I love the fact that there were some. So, Max had 15 wins this year, Charles 3, Checo 2, but then both Carlos and George, new winners on the circuit, and that was great. I couldn't be more excited for both of them. Carlos having long had opportunities and been in rides that just weren't there, but then George, new to Mercedes, was fun to watch. Poles, Charles 9, Max 7. Carlos had come in with none, had 3, because if the Spa penalty situation for some of the teams gave him that one. So Carlos 3, Checo 1, George 1, and K-Mag 1. All 4 of those guys, Carlos, Checo, George, and K-Mag, got their first poles this year. So for me, I would say just some of the people who hadn't had those experiences was fun to watch. And then the second thing for me was the following. I loved it. I loved the closer following. You could follow closer for longer, and you didn't have to back out and manage tires and come back at it. We saw it at Jeddah immediately, that Max, Charles, when they would come down to the DRS detection point and they'd both try to brake a little bit, so they'd come through a hair behind the other guy one time, both locking up. That was a great signal. We had Alpine also at Jeddah fighting each other right next to each other. This year had a 31% increase in overtakes. And I would say there were some races that were just friggin' tremendous because of it. Silverstone, my favorite, as we were talking about before we came on air, the Lewis Hamilton moment when this happened.
Through goes Hamilton!
While that was part of it, right? That was part of it. That's fine that it won the FIA Action of the Year. I don't really care. The point is, the last 10 minutes of that race were tremendous because of all the cars flip-flopping places, second, third, fourth, fifth. Fernando stuck his nose in there at the end. So for me, I loved the new faces on the top step of the podium, on the pole, and especially some of the following this year. So that was me. I loved it. I thought it was a great year.
Yeah, I mean, so I wrote down 2 things, and one was overtaking and following with exclamation mark after it. Like the new regs, I was really worried were going to be a damp squib that's like, oh yeah, cars are going to be able to follow, they're going to be able to follow, and I thought they're going to mess it up, and we're not going to get racing. But like you said, first few races of the season, I went back, I looked at some of the race notes that we did in preparation for some of the shows, and like we're just writing like, so-and-so does a move on so-and-so, oh my god, they're following each other, like 1 and 2 following each other through the corners. There's been like no backing off to save tires. They've just been on it in chase mode for like 5-6 laps at a time. That some people have been a bit negative, said the new regs didn't do anything because Max ran away with it. I don't think you can blame the regs with the fact that Max won. We saw action all over, so loved that. I am going to do the guilty thing of saying, because this section was called personal highlight of kind of the whole year, then I've got to put Jacques in there. I have to. And actually, my personal highlight of that is the fact that it even happened because of the way that my backyard is situated, where my compost heap is up on an elevated section. So when Paul sent me the text to say it's happening in 5 minutes, and I booked it from down there to get down to my basement, I almost lost it twice coming down off the elevated section. So it could have been an interview that never happened because I could have ended up face down on the stones, knocking myself out. So my proudest moment is that I actually managed to run down to my basement in time to log on. So.
Which moment do you mean? Do you mean this one here?
This is Jacques Villeneuve, and you're listening to the dirty side of the track.
Is that the one you're talking about? Paul, thank you again, man, for making that happen. That was the coolest thing for 2 doofuses like Rob and I.
That's no problem. And as I mentioned on the last thing, we still speak about it, and he still says it was, you guys just handled it different. So listen, it's full credit. It's full credit to you guys. I can put someone in front of you, but if you're asking douche questions, I'm just gonna so fair play.
We just
I'm gonna take different as a compliment. If we start thinking about then the flip side of that, kind of the lowlights, then I'm gonna go first because I went last just then. I'm gonna kick it off and go around the other way. Lowlight for me as a Ferrari fan was the dawning realization after the first few races that those real heated battles with Ferrari looking like they'd finally got the combination of a car and a driver that could challenge for a championship in the first time since Jurassic days. It just started to ebb away quite soon. I know we all kind of went into the break and Binotto's got his famous, we could win the next 10 races. Yeah, nice one. That was a low light for me, realizing that Ferrari were not going to be part of this title hunt. What about you? Well, I'm gonna go to guest next. I'm gonna go to Rob.
Well, I think I didn't actually, I think my highlight though, right, just briefly would be Brazil. I think Brazil was the best race
Amazing
of the
weekend.
year. I think it validated the sprint format. I think it answered all of the critics. The critics say, oh yeah, they're not going to take risks in the sprint race. I mean, there was like so much contact during that sprint race. It was incredible. Oh, it's just going to be the first stint of the race, and then you're not going to see much in the actual race. Like all the overtaking will happen in the sprint. It'll set the grid. That's the criticism of the sprint. It did. And then there was plenty of action, when it came to the race. So, not to say that every weekend needs to be a sprint, but I think it validated its existence in Formula One. It's just a matter of like just picking the right tracks.
Yeah.
Brazil clearly
Yeah.
is the right track, and there's probably more, but it's not all of them.
What kind of a doofus do you think would think that the sprint would have all of the overtakes in and be nothing left for the race? I mean, I can't even get inside the mind of somebody that would think that about Brazil. Brian?
And Rob, what was the low light for you this year?
Moving on. But yeah, so that was my quick highlight. But I'd say the low light for me is that like Verstappen's dominance was actually pretty boring. And I think it's boring because he doesn't have a worthy teammate. Like when we've seen dominant performances from other drivers in the past, at least their teammate was giving them a run for their money. When like there was, without naming any names or teams, like when there was a car that was clearly superior to the rest of the field, there was at least a teammate that was winning races, getting poles on a consistent basis, giving their teammate, a run for their money. And you just don't see that. And I actually asked a team this in Abu Dhabi, because I was going around introducing myself to all the teams, and we would have like quick conversations. And the insight that I got from this team, and I can't say who it was because I don't have like, it wasn't like a proper interview and so forth. But let's just say they are a manufacturer, auto manufacturer, and they said that the manufacturers prioritize the constructors championship. That is their priority. And if they win the drivers championship, that's great too. Whereas if you're an energy drink maker, team, you're prioritizing winning the drivers championship. That is your number one goal because, constructors is actually secondary to you. And so what we see from Red Bull is just a different philosophy that ends up creating this dynamic where you've got a number one driver and a car that's developed and improved throughout the year for that number one driver. So even if you had a number two driver, like it doesn't even matter. They're always going to be at a disadvantage when they're doing it the Red Bull way. So, and that just makes it boring. Like I want to celebrate Verstappen's dominance, but it just really wasn't that exciting to watch.
Just cutting in there, it's a good point you actually make.
Great
a few guys at Red Bull last year, they were like, and I know them, and they don't mean no harm by the comments, but they're like, yeah, but we're world champions. Like, but you're not world champions. Mercedes are world champions. They won the constructors. Yeah, but we won the drivers. Okay, so Max is world champion. You guys run us up in the champion, and it's sort of like you've nailed it there by that comment. Like certain teams do prioritize drivers championships over constructors, and yeah, it's amazing that you can have that mindset because the constructors for a team is the finance, it's the money, it's everything. But yeah, it's a very good point.
Can we all just celebrate for a moment Ferrari's ability to prioritize neither?
Or to execute on neither. Can I also say this is our 51st podcast, and that was the first time someone named Rob made me really think, and it was an insightful comment, well thought out, with reason behind it, and I don't know how to handle that. So
Rob, you didn't like the first time you came on the show. Oh, I don't know what to say about that.
Or your other 50, Rob.
Yeah, it's like 51. I think you covered there, dude.
Yeah.
You got it.
Exactly.
What about you, Paul? What's your low light then?
Well, I can say, I'm going to go a little bit with Rob here. I'm just going to mention Magnussen in Brazil because, like, is it from a personal thing, knowing how teams operate, knowing how much you meant to those guys? That was pretty special. Not just from K-Mag, just for the team. That was special. But a quick dip back into the favourites. Look, the worst parts were probably the shakedown in Maranello when we discovered the car had this bouncing thing. And I know I probably bored you guys with this, but France, my God, it was you go away and you spend like 3 4 nights in a hotel and seriously, it was just Grand Prix are not always exciting, they're not always brilliant, but France, my word. For me, easy winner. And I actually will say quickly, I think a stat man like you, Brian, will appreciate. Now, I might get this wrong here. So there was only one race where a non-Ferrari, Red Bull, or Mercedes driver was on the podium. I think that was Lando in Imola.
Yes, correct.
And for me, it's just like, yeah, okay, we mentioned this new great racing, the regulations, but it hasn't really mixed it up that much. So I'd like to see a little bit more. And that's not the team's fault, that's not their problem, but I'd like to see a little bit more because it was like I agree, it's a little bit boring just seeing domination. Worst part of the year, Joe's crash at Silverstone. To be that close to that and knowing the kid as he is, because he's a funny little guy, like you'll never believe. But to be that close to the team when that's happening, and I think I touched on it in a previous episode, to not know, and you don't know what you don't know the situation. Yeah, we don't want to see too much of that. So probably my low light of the season will be that crash at Silverstone. That's got very.
Yeah, I mean, remember you saying on game, we must have spoken to you. I'm sure it was because we were talking. You don't find out any quicker than we do watching TV. It's kind of like there's no special back channel, no special communication, which blew my mind because I just assumed there would be in a situation like that.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. That's not.
Yeah.
It's and like I said, when you are the other side of them and they're in the same situation as you, and they're not know. Yeah, look, we had Grosjean in Bahrain. Which you could say is a worse accident. You have good reason for saying that, but any accident of that magnitude or that severity and not knowing we're all in this sport together. That's a pretty sad time to be involved in F1 because you are just sort of like, oh God, please get out.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me that's easily my worst part of the season. You never want to go through that.
What about you, Brian?
So, Paul, as you said, we did talk about this. That was one of mine from the midseason, and it stuck. That crash was just horrible. And so I had sort of a couple things. So that I had the cost cap saga. I understand we had to have this discussion, but talk about a real downer that didn't have anything to do with the actual on-the-track product. And yes, we can talk about what it may have influenced. I hated the cost cap situation. I really did not like dealing with that. The porpoising, Paul, as you said, was interesting. You could always tell the team radio from Lewis because it just kept going. You could hear this. My back is killing me. As a guy who has a back problem, I did not enjoy every team who had it, right? It was not fun to watch, and it really didn't help. But Rob, I got to agree with you. Ferrari was my low light. There were a lot of reasons, and I recognize it wasn't as bad at the end of the season. So I don't want to be a victim of recency bias and overdo it, but the mistakes, the strategy, the lack of reliability from things like this.
Wait, what are these tires?
Sorry, it's a mistake.
I mean, to things like this.
Are you okay?
To things like this.
Question is, would you like to have a new medium to go through the traffic or prefer a new hard? Question.
I mean, how many questions can we ask to them telling Carlos, who ended up winning this race, to back off?
Stop inventing.
So, and I could do this for a week, and so, you have all these things that a team like Ferrari, who means so much to the sport, just kept doing these things and stepping in it on themselves. So, yeah, those would be the things for me that kind of were lowlights for the year.
Question for Paul.
Sorry, I was going to cut in. I think the Ferrari thing was really interesting because they're a team who I've said before, and they know what they're doing. They're sensational. They're one of the best teams in the sport. So to continually make mistakes to the level they had was entertaining in the end, but it was just mind blowing that a team of that magnitude can do that. And secondly, the cost cap to be involved with the sport, and I think the cost cap it got annoying in the end. But when you have a team principal who's going to come out and say that other teams owe them an apology when they have pretty much been, I don't say convicted, that sounds a serious word, but convicted of cheating. And they've actually owned up to that convictions. They've owned up to cheating. And then this guy is going on and saying like other teams owe us an apology. Um, I I look that was a really weird time to be in the paddock because there was so much dislike towards that team, and I think something we said at the very start of this episode, something you said, Mr. Reed, is like as a team like Red Bull, get someone like Ricky Ardoin who's got a little bit of personality, a little bit of outward thing, will go a long way to repair that team. And yeah, I think the cost cap was a massively significant part of this year and sadly last year as well. And I really feel sorry for a little bit for Max again because he's got another year where he has that thing hanging over his head is well he actually didn't deserve the championship. He didn't deserve it last year because not he didn't deserve it. That's the wrong way. It was given to him. It was given to him last year on the back of Lewis. He definitely deserved the championship, but it was given to him. And then this year with a cost cut, people are just always going to say, "Well, your team cheated," and he does not deserve that because he has just been standout. He's been a phenomenal driver all season. They've been a phenomenal team, but they keep getting these things over them.
Right.
So yeah, it's for me that I sort of agree that was pretty low. It was pretty low light of the season to have that again, have this controversy in the sport again, and it was pretty draining.
So what I was going to ask you just before that, before you went back to the Red Bull and the cost cap on Ferrari, is that a rumor that was circulating Twitter today, and they were attributing it to the Italian press, so I don't know how much is in this, is that Binotto is about to be fired. And the guy who I saw being interviewed last race, who was looking very much forward to going and fishing all of his retirement, a certain Ross Brawn, is now being touted as being the guy that's going to take over in Ferrari. Any insider knowledge from either of you two from hanging around the paddock last race?
Well, Rob, you did a lot more networking than me. I do.
I asked. They're not going to give me those answers, but I have to ask, and I did.
Yeah.
And I asked your because like Vasseur was floated initially, so I asked your guy Will, and he was like, nope. So
But I was with I was basically being really cruel to Fred on Friday night, telling him like, why are you going to Ferrari anyway, so it doesn't matter. Now look, I think we oh yeah. I think if you're within motorsport and you think that going to Ferrari is a great career move for you, then you're absolutely bonkers. So the only way Ferrari, in my opinion, are going to become a better team, and you need a boss who's going to go in there and accept that they're not going to do anything for 2 years because the car for next year is done. That is not to say the car's going to be bad, but the car for next year is done. Development's already sort of underway. Designs are underway for the 2024 car. So what you need to have is you need to have somebody to go into a team who's got such punch and such fire where he can just look at people and go, "You're not good enough. You need to go. You're not good enough. You need to go." And then start bringing people in. And with Ferrari, it's the classic old thing. You can keep changing your manager, but if the people who are working for that manager are not up to the job, then your manager's always going to keep getting fired. It's like I'm going to say soccer just to appeal for the American audience, and Rob, you'll appreciate this. There are I'm going to go back, football teams who sack manager time after time after time, yet they retain the same squad. And then eventually someone figures out that it's actually the squad that are really rubbish and not the manager. The manager's trying to play around with people who aren't up to the job. I see that a little bit with Ferrari, and I hate saying that about other work colleagues, but I think if you go into Ferrari, you need to have a big set of cajubas to be able to start sacking people at the top and start bringing people in to redevelop that team. As if you go in there, I don't think you can do that. So you're just taking a poison chalice job where you're going to go in there and within 2 years, you're going to fail like they all do and you're going to get sacked because Ferrari, for me, need to strip down from the top. That's my humble opinion of that team.
So, I mean, I know we might be trying to do some predictions, some very, very way too early predictions at the end of this show, but are you already telling me not to get my hopes up for next year because Ferrari's cars is going to be just as bad as it was? Or because my little crumb of optimism, right? My little crumb of optimism is that lots of the teams that didn't quite get this year's regulations completely nailed, like say like Red Bull just had a slippery fast car that just seemed to absolutely nail it. I like to think they haven't got too much further to go now and find too much more within these regs, whereas everyone else has got an opportunity to close all those massive holes, and it'll all be amazing next year. Crush my dreams, Paul.
Oh, Ferrari had the fastest car this year, I think. Well, not at the end of the year, but at the start of the year, they definitely had the fastest car. They just didn't execute any plans. If you think to all their mistakes, it came at the start of the year. So,
well, I thought I read that they had the fastest car, but because they hadn't got the reliability sorted, they were just burning through engine components. So they ended up dialing the engine down a bit to be more reliable, and then that's when it all fell away because they just weren't fast anymore. So I guess if I don't know enough about this, but aerodynamically then from the new reg, they probably don't have to redesign too much there. They've just got to look at whatever led to them having to dial it down, I guess.
Yeah, I would say there's a million things which you could look at. I mean, to say you've got to turn the engine down, the Ferrari engine isn't brilliant. We know that from Alfa Romeo. Just for the fact that we had a lot of engine issues. It's wrong to say it's not brilliant, but I'm just going to be honest with what I see. Red Bull they've just got. That's going to sound a really horrible line. They've just got the money and the ability to keep developing a car. Mercedes is saying if you think Mercedes were at a level where they were competitive at the start of the year, the development that they put into that car, bear in mind that they scrapped that car in the middle of the year. They were just like, right, we're starting to work on a new car because this car is, for one of the better way, a skip. So they weren't even, and it still won a race at the end of the year. You look how close Mercedes were at the end of the year to Ferrari. If Mercedes get their act together, they'll blow everyone away next year. I'm pretty sure of that. But Red Bull haven't got to do a lot. Ferrari haven't got to do a lot. Ferrari lost the championship themselves, not even especially with reliability. Ferrari lost that championship themselves with silly mistakes and silly decisions. And if you go back through the season, which I'm sure Brian, who was the king of SAP stats, will have a whole list of probable races where Ferrari would have outscored Red Bull by X amount of points and been more competitive in the championship. So when you say don't crush your dreams, do you honestly?
I don't know. I don't think it would have ended any differently if Ferrari had executed flawlessly on strategy, and that was the big criticism of Ferrari. Like same car, same development, and if they had made no strategic mistakes, I think they still end up P2. Leclerc ends up P2 because Red Bull was like that dominant. I mean, I saw a fact the other day that if Verstappen hadn't had those DNFs, he could have locked the championship at Monza.
Yeah, yeah, but I'm gonna.
Can you imagine that?
I'm gonna counter that one though, and what you'll actually have is you will get to a stage where, as a team, you will know you're out of the championship. You're out of the constructors. So if you probably look around, let's say Monza, probably look in the middle of the year. Red Bull was so far ahead. There's no chance that the constructors' title will go anywhere else but Ferrari. So at that point, go anywhere else but Red Bull. At that point, Ferrari would literally skip back on any work on that car because there's no point really pushing your resources into that car because you're just wasting money. You may as well put your resource into 23 car. So, and I think that's why you saw a pretty significant drop off. Now they probably got a little bit overconfident, thinking that Mercedes weren't going to come back at them from third to second, which Mercedes got very close in the end. That would be my way of thinking on that. The drivers are, you're not going to beat Max, but in the middle of the year, Charles is pretty much not going to get anywhere. So I think if it would have been closer, and I agree what you're saying, I do agree what you're saying there, Rob, but if it would have been closer, I think what you would have seen is Ferrari actually would have continued to put money in. And we had it with Mercedes last year when we were not that fussed on the car, but last year was in 2021, weren't that fussed on the car, but they had to sort of develop the car in the middle. They had to start putting a lot of resource into the middle of the year to try and keep Red Bull back and try and keep Lewis in the championship. So, yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I think again, you've got a very
good point, though. Yeah, because at a certain point, you just shift resources to the future.
Of course, yeah. There's no point pumping money into something you don't need to. So, but I don't know. That's just again that's purely opinion. But yeah, over to you guys.
Any other lowlights that anyone wants to hit before we move on to some of the winners of the season or overperformers?
Have I mentioned France?
I'm going to jump in on that one too in a little bit because I have four least favorite races, but we'll get there.
I was going to say we need.
Go ahead, Rob.
No, go on, Rob. If you've got another low light, go for it.
One like a small low light that like the FIA itself should not be the story coming out of races, and I think it was on several occasions. I think they need to get their stuff together, and just make some operational changes about how they when and how penalties are handed out, and just be more consistent. Like they just keep controversy. There was just so much controversy around Singapore, around Japan. I actually like Monza finished under a safety car, and that was actually like the one kind of consistent thing that we saw from the season from the FIA. That of course brought up past controversies, but I don't want to be talking about the FIA and decisions that they made coming out of a race weekend. I want to be talking about the action on track.
That's a great point.
Very good point.
I actually use an analogy like that when I do some speeches, if you will call them that, lectures. And I always talk about sports and the referee. You never want to talk about the referee because something's going wrong if you're talking about the ref. So that's a great point on the FIA. So, Rob Vale, hit me with some of your winners or people who overperform teams.
Do we want to do... Let's combine. Let's do winners and losers, okay? Right, and then we can pull apart each other's. So, I had 3 winners and 3 losers. My 3 winners of this season, and I'm probably going to steal everyone else's, but here we go. George. I think this was a big year for George. I think getting his first win, I think beating Lewis in the same machinery, which brought loads of memes out. But I think that's big for him. I think we'll see how next year goes in that car. And Lewis is definitely still the number 1 driver in that team, but that gap is getting smaller. I'm telling you, the day when George becomes the number 1 driver in Mercedes, I don't think is too far away. I got to acknowledge Max. He was amazing. Absolutely machine. Just obliterated everything else around him. So Max is my 1 minute. Minners? That's the same as a podcast. And
nailed it.
My last winner was Lando.
As a podcast. Nothing's as bad as a podcast.
Hey now, right? Lando was my other winner because I just think from a kind of a best of the rest, almost carrying that. I can't remember the Twitter handle of the guy that did kind of the analysis of all of the teams and did a thread today. It was very, very good, and they called McLaren the fast brick. That was the kind of the summary of the car for the season. I thought Lando put that thing in places that it probably didn't deserve to be. So yeah, Lando was my winner. And my loser side is, unfortunately, Danny Rick, the Ferrari team, and Mercedes. Mercedes I had as a loser because it just felt like for the first time in eons, and Paul is way closer to this, is they must have just not quite got the regs right this year. Something wasn't quite... They seemed to be fighting a losing battle from the beginning of the season, and it was just disappointing to see them off the pace like that because, yes, I like to see a dominance come to an end. Sorry, Paul. So in a way, kind of not having Merck win the Constructors is kind of good for the sport, I think, to mix it up a bit. But I didn't want to see them fall that far behind and not being involved in it at all. So feel free to hurl abuse on any of my selections there, guys. Oh, no abuse.
I mean,
well, I'm happy to go because I'm happy to because mine are actually quite interesting based on what Rob's just said. So winners from the season, I'm going to go for Mercedes. No, yeah, but look, Rob, you're correct. But for a team that has started the year, and there's, bear in mind that we were quicker at Alfa Romeo than Mercedes for the first probably 4 or 5 races of the season. We went to Imola, and when Valtteri got the 5th place, we were hunting George down in 4th. We were quicker than George. It was just we couldn't get the DRS. They've got a better overtake mode than what our car has got. So you're talking about a team who had major issues. The car was rattling itself apart. They gave up on the car pretty quickly because they knew that it was just not a car that was anywhere near doing anything with. And you heard it at the end of the season with Toto and Lewis saying how they want to see the back of the car. This is a team that still won a race. Brian, sat me up. How many podiums did that team have this year?
Yes.
Brilliant.
It's not on demand, Paul. I'm not some kind of savant.
Honestly, I thought you were like Superman stat man or something.
Yeah. Sorry to show you behind the curtains.
No, it's fine. I just look at that team and just think, for the year they had and the car they had, to have the bounce back they had to win a race, they should have had a 1-2 in Brazil. To have a team that could bounce back. And if you said after 4 races of the season that you go into the last few races of the year and Mercedes will be challenging Ferrari for second place, you just laugh at me. So when you say, again, you're right, they shouldn't be down there, but the bounce back they had, the fight back they had, just shows why they are the best team. I know I'm biased, but that just shows why they are the best team out there. That is fact. So yeah, I'm going to go for Mercedes. I'm going to stay home and go Alfa Romeo. I think they've had a great year, 6th place. I think I've got to go there. It's weird to celebrate a 6th place for me because and even though I've been, the first, where we're looking, 11 years of my time in F1, we couldn't finish in the top 3 of a championship. So to finish P6, I just found it hard to celebrate. But when you see how much the team celebrate, you see how much it means to them, and that's brilliant. Somewhere where I really actually dislike, and I think I made it clear in my review, but Brazil. What a race! What a place! What a sprint race! What a race weekend! So one of my massive highlights was Brazil. It was a brilliant weekend to be involved in F1. It was just exciting. Everything was good. Losers. Do you know what? Sorry, guys. Miami race. It was a disaster. And again, it's stuff that you don't see. It's stuff that's paddock related. And it was just. It was. Yeah. There's not for most people who work in F1 to before Miami were so excited to go. I didn't speak to anyone who works in F1 who left Miami looking forward to going back there.
Wow.
Everyone disliked it. So yeah, that was a massive disappointment for me was that. And then we've touched on it. I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm going to move on. It's not France. It begins with an F. It is Ferrari. My God, guys, come on. So that's mine.
Rob?
Well, so yeah, I mean, I echo George Russell. Being, I think just his consistency impressed me. I mean, consistency is what wins championships. That needs to be a quality of every championship driver. So I think he got top 5 for 19 out of the 22. Was it? Yeah. I heard you guys from last week with the stats.
Yep, that's right.
I remembered that.
I did research that one in advance, though, Paul. I don't have those just all top of my head.
And I mean, I think he came out of 3 hard years at Williams. Out driving an underperforming car, and fortunately for him, he got put into the same kind of situation with that Mercedes initially, but he outdrove the car, and again, just kind of showed more championship material. I don't put anything into the fact that he beat Hamilton. I think Hamilton explained some of that away, that he was the guinea pig, and I take him at his word on that. And of course, I think you guys mentioned it last week. Hamilton only cares if it was between 1 and 2. Anything else, he really doesn't care. Whether or not he loses to his teammate. So not here to say Russell's a superior driver to Hamilton. That would be absurd. I think the loser is really Verstappen in the court of public opinion. I think he just did himself no favors in Brazil, in terms of being a likable person or a great champion. It takes more than winning championships to be a great champion. And he just keeps getting in his own way with this behavior and this attitude. I mean, I think like self-awareness is a very good quality that a person can have. And I probably wasn't that self-aware at 24 years old, but that's like somebody needs to take him aside and put a little more coaching into him on how to be a great champion. And you don't have to court adoration, which is what Horner kind of like dismisses it. Like he doesn't care about being adored. He doesn't need to care about being adored. He just has to be a good example for people. And so I just think he
needs to care about not being a doofus.
Exactly. Yeah, he just like something went wrong, and people have like accused him of just being like robotic, and he just needs better guidance. And Horner's not doing him any favors either by just defending it all. So that's
I thought you were going to bring up Machiavelli, and I was going to say that'd be the first time on this podcast that someone could bring up a Machiavellian type approach to being loved or feared. So, I mean, that was a great point. Interestingly, I have Max on the winners. Just on face value, the domination, even if in the intro Rob said it's all the car, I know that's fake. In all seriousness, he dominated. And to me, it's not just the 15 wins, and I recognize there are more races. It's not just the percent. In Spa, he came back from 14th on the grid to win. At Hungary, from 10th to win. And so, to me, he has a teammate, and there are other cars and other constructors and other drivers, and he still did that. And to me, you look at 52 Ascari, 63 Clark, and there's a few other that are really outstanding, but this has to be in sort of that second tier of dominating seasons. And my other winners were Alfa Romeo and Haas. So, Paul, to your point, 40 points above last year for Alfa Romeo. We already talked about Valtteri's fifth at Imola, giving them sixth place in the Constructor. That's amazing. Haas, 33 points up over last year. And they still did it with one of my underperformers or losers. I had Latifi, Mick, and Danny Rick in my three that just didn't go the way it should have went. And Latifi, I don't know how he got lost on the racetrack. Where was that? Was that Canada? No.
Japan.
No, it was Japan.
Thank you.
It was
He got
Japan when he
lost
pulled
on the
off.
racetrack into an area.
Yeah. Something's gone wrong with the car.
Yeah, your GPS is off. Your green line wasn't working. But
the racing line got turned off.
Yeah, exactly. Someone turned the racing line off. But so in all seriousness, after De Vries drove for him and got 2 points, and Latifi was on zero for quite some time, he was at risk of finishing behind someone who'd had one race for the season in his own car. Now he didn't, but still, it was a tough year. And so, wish him all the best. Danny Rick, we've talked about. And Mick, man, I'm sorry, Rob. Like, I recognize he's talented. He just didn't do a lot with the same car that Kevin did a lot with. And I know there's a difference, and I know Mick's not a rookie, but last year was like a lost season for Haas with him and Mazepin. It felt like it was tough. I really hope he can come back as a team's reserve driver, get some seasoning, get some extra practice, and then hopefully kick some ass when he gets back on the grid, because I think he deserves to get back on the grid. But to me, that was an underperforming year for Mick.
Can I just
So I've got a question for Paul. Paul, sorry, I'm going to put you right on the spot here.
Okay.
So we were just talking about Max, and a few of us had Max on the winner side, and Rob had him on the loser side, and for different sides of his character, right? Obviously, winner in race dominance, on the loser side for characteristics. Now, you told us on one of the very first episodes you came on, you talked about Michael Schumacher, and you talked about how out on the track he was ruthless and kind of had this would bully people off the track, and there was the Michael on the track persona, but back in the garage he would have, not garage, he would have the little photos or little kind of notes about each of the crew, because he was kind of real team player and kind of just had this aura, and everyone kind of sort of saw that was the upside, and he had a great character. Do you see Verstappen having that at all, or is he the same as we all? Because we all look at it from the outside in, right? We hear these team radio messages, we hear the heat of the moment stuff, and we don't really know what on in the paddock. I'm not suggesting Max is a Michael, but what do you think he's like on the inside of that garage?
So, look, okay. Funny enough, I was going to cut in and say this. So Max is a really good guy. So I've had a bit to do with Max. He's a really good guy. Personally, he's brilliant. So it's something which I want to touch on with champions. Now, if you look back through we're not going to go all the way back because we haven't got time. But if we go back to, let's say, Schumacher had like his persona was so aggressive, it was so moody, it was so he was so upfront. He wasn't liked. He was like this guy who everyone said, like, you need to have more respect, yada yada. Go into the next generation after him. I mean, let's say Vettel. I mean, everyone loves Sir Vettel, but when he was winning with Red Bull, he wasn't a very popular guy. He was disliked. He was. You look at him in Webber. You look at the way that he was. You look at the way that he actually held himself and behaved as a driver. He was disgraceful. Lewis. I mean, Lewis's latter years has got a little bit better with Valtteri, but the Nico times, he wasn't brilliant. And if anyone thinks that Lewis was brilliant, he wasn't. And then we're now going to this era of Max, and Max is this guy who everyone just saw like, you're such a, And what I will say is, Danny Rick, Valtteri, Mark Webber. I'm just going to test my memory. I think Massa, Barrichello. I'm going to name. There's probably more, but I'm going to go for 6 people there who were all teammates to these guys when they were dominating. But if you look at all those 6, you just think they're brilliant guys, they're lovely people. Whereas you look at the bloke who's winning the races and the championships, they were like, they're super aggressive. They're you're like, oh God, why would you be like that? For me, I don't know. I just think like, do you need to have more? Is that a thing of a champion? Is that a thing of like, you need to have this raw aggression, this raw attitude, this horrendous attitude almost? And I'm not defending I mean, I could tell you stories of these guys all day long, but if we go through, Michael was ruthless. You look at the instant with Damon Hill. We're going back to the 90s. We're going back a long way. The instant with Jack. Monaco, when he seemingly stopped, yada yada. Let's go to Vettel. Vettel in Weber. Was it Malaysia? What was the thing? Multi 21.
Multi 21.
Yeah. Then you go on to Lewis and Nico. I mean, like, I was in the team then. It was toxic. It was horrendous team to where divided the mechanics. It wasn't, and then you go to Max now with a Sergio. So I don't know. I just think like sometimes as a champion, you almost have to have this this thing about you. And I can promise you one thing now: Max Verstappen is a really, really, really nice lad. He's a really good guy. I speak to him a lot. We have a laugh. We have a lot of good. We have a lot of funny, interesting conversations. I can't remember a race this year. We was in a lift with him, and he was just telling me how appalling. It was Miami. How appalling the track was, and so on and so forth. And they ended up doing quite well. So I kept jibbing him, saying like, "Well, it can't be that bad. You loser, you're winning." So like, and he's
so in summary, I'm going to point the finger of blame at the one of the other people that's on the squares on here. Would you say it's fair to say? Actually, it's not the journalists. It's not the journalists, Rob. I'm sorry. I think Max is becoming champion, and in an era where keyboard warriors exist way more than they ever did. If Twitter existed in the days of Michael Schumacher, I think Max just becomes this figure of hate that is so easy to perpetuate that through the online world that I think that's something he has to deal with. And Lewis before him, that lots and lots of drivers prior to that have never even had to even worry about how to deal with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to drag back Abu Dhabi last year, but I genuinely think Abu Dhabi last year wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for social media and the media and their portrayal of these guys. If you look at after Silverstone with that, if that crash, and I'm still massively on the fence on that crash. I don't think for me it was a pretty standard sort of racing incident. It was high speed and it was bad, but the media outcry. And then the second thing I would say with these instances, you look at the team managers. You look at Christian. Christian is just this, and he's an intelligent man. He's super focused, and he's obviously there to defend his team at all costs. And the same with Toto. They won't go against their team. So when the media are constantly sorry, Mr. Reed, this isn't you, but yeah, but when the media are constantly jabbing the finger into him and like provoking reactions, I know you guys. I don't know if you're following this saga at the moment with the World Cup and Cristiano Ronaldo in Manchester United. In all of the press conferences in Portugal at the moment, they're not really asking Portugal about how they're doing as a team. They're asking him how Cristiano Ronaldo is because he's had this falling out with Man United, and that goes the same as F1. Whereas no one wants to ask a journalist does not want to ask the team principal about their chances of the race. I want to ask him about a crash that happened 4 months ago. And while that still happens, and they're always waiting for that quote, and when that quote comes out, and Rob Rail absolutely agree with you. The social media experts, the people who have never been to a racetrack in their lives, would just sit there eating Watsits on their sofa with a string vest on in their pants watching a race, knows everything there is to know about Formula One, and they make the most ridiculous comments. I mean, if I gotta go on a full rant, the amount of arguments I had at the end of last season about people saying, "Well, if Lewis would have boxed for tires, he would have won the race." No, you don't understand because you're not there. You're not, and that's the problem. And you have all these experts, these social media people who fuel it, and actually that then backs onto the media. The media sort of follow the social media because the social media prompt the media to ask the questions. So that's absolutely my opinion. I'm going to go to Rob Reed now, who's going to absolutely destroy me live on the dirty side of the track. Look, folks.
No, I mean the media's got a job to do, and it's to provoke responses, certainly, and if there's just no story there, they gotta, in this world of media, it's about clicks and views, and so whatever's going to drive traffic, whatever's going to drive clicks is going to be the lead story. So that's just the nature of media. But yeah, I do agree, Rob, about social media playing a pretty big role in creating these personas that don't exist. I don't think Max is a bad person at all. I don't think any of these guys are. But like and it's like, I remember when Max declined to be on Drive to Survive because he said it didn't represent like reality. My pushback on that was like, nothing you do represents reality. You only tell the media what you want them to hear. Like none of it's real. None of it's, the quote unquote truth. It's all a spin that you give, and Drive to Survive was just doing a spin that you didn't like. Right. And that was your problem with it. Like there is no truth. There is no like reality here. It's all a game, really. But my point is, you're not playing the game very well.
Right.
Well, and that's that's my criticism of him, is like, there's just somebody there who's not, coaching him, whether it's his dad or his manager or his agent or his team principal. Like somebody's not there giving him good advice about, just behavior.
But so agreed with the points on some of the champion behaviors, and maybe that's something that is needed to say that's always my corner, and I'm going to take that corner, and you got to deal with it. But back to the PR aspect, right, that we're hitting right now. Has there been in recent memory a team principal like Horner who comes out, admits they cheated, and then is on the offensive and wants to know about the leak and tries to change the story that way? And it just keeps it in the news. And then the next news cycle for them is Max not helping his teammate and screaming into the radio. And instead of anyone saying anything positive afterwards, they issue a statement which was ridiculous gobbledygook, 3 days later. And so it just feels to me as though Red Bull seems to embrace some of the chaos at times. Not Max per se, but the team itself. And I don't understand that part. Like so Rob, I think I'm agreeing with you. It's not the person, and it's just the weird kind of, we're okay putting more gasoline on the fire at times. And I don't get that part of it, but I don't know.
You touched on the last episode, by the way, I agree with you on the statement after Brazil, and I can't figure out that, like, you bear in mind a company like Red Bull, which are they're basically a global marketing company. That's all they are. And they've let this press release go out, which is so obviously lies, and it's just like you're honestly you're reading this thing, and it's just sort of like, but we all saw that didn't happen, and it's just sort of like I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you're right. Someone like Christian, he just doesn't. At the end of the day, you don't you don't necessarily have to like Toto's I think, a really smart media trained human being. Whereas Christian I don't know if Christian is. I don't know him well enough. He's a bit of a closed book, Christian Horner, but I I look at the both of those guys and just think if that was Toto in that position, I mean Toto has come out with some things which are a little bit like, well, come on, dude, you could have said that a little bit better. I think the job of the team principal is to protect your assets. Um, how you do that in the way they do it confuses me. And
Well,
yeah,
I mean, look, clearly there had been conversations within the team about the Monaco incident with Checo, right? Going into Brazil. Like, so it's like, not, this isn't anything new. The crazy thing for me is that Max somehow thought that throwing that out there as a reason would make him look better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like, I've won the drivers, we've won the constructors. I'm holding a grudge from Monaco against my teammate, who has definitely helped me, in my success. So yeah, so for all of you who think I'm doing this for no reason, that's the reason.
Yeah.
It's a really good reason as well.
Keep
Yeah.
digging.
Yeah.
yeah, but then there were reports of like family members on the Verstappen side coming out and
yeah.
basically making references to other instances involving Sergio, which I don't really want to go down that road, but like,
Yeah. Let's bail on this one.
yeah, but you're like, I don't. When that's happening again, is part of the team to not address that. I still maintain the last race. I think, and again, every one of you is saying here, I'm totally going down this line. I think the last race for them to have not really given Perez or Max to have not really helped Perez. You roll back 12 months ago when Sergio's really holding Lewis up in like Max on the radio saying that Sergio's a legend. This isn't an anti-Max thing. This is just an anti-team thing. I just think, as a team, you've got to do better on that front. We're team orders never good. I never like to see team orders. We had it go against us for Valtteri at Mercedes when Lewis go for the championship, and I totally get it. Why you need to do it, but at the same time, I just sort of like I look at Red Bull and just think you don't really have. They're not really an empathy team, are they? You can't really warm to them. You can't really get. So yeah.
So I'm going to pull us out of this. We've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole, which has been great. But I think we've, the dirty side's all about fun. So let's pull ourselves out now of our deep and meaningful conversations into the psyche of champions and PR, which is a great conversation. But let's now go the opposite way and start thinking about funniest moments of the season. What are our things that we can really look back on and say we had a giggle out of that one? So, Brian, you haven't been first at all on this. So, Brian, my co-host, what's your funniest moment of the season?
I actually played all the Ferrari clips that I had, so I was going to, in all seriousness, this is a true story. I actually would make memes for Twitter ahead of the race for predicting Ferrari would screw up so I could send them out the second they did it. It was that dependable around the middle of the year. And as much as I love the sport, and I do, and as much fun as it is to watch, it's nice to see that, everyone works there are people too, and they make mistakes just like the rest of us. And so for me, honestly, the funniest moments were the Ferrari screw-ups, and whether it was 3 tires waiting for Carlos when he came in instead of 4, or the 47 times they had unsafe releases in the pits, or all the different situations with strategy. And I will never, ever, ever get enough of adding this word at the end of my sentences.
Question?
I mean, I put it on everything. It's like Frank's Red Hot. I put that thing on everything. So anyway, for me, those are my favorites. But I would before I turn it over, I just want to highlight a couple things. I thought there were 2 races that were really so good. And we talked about both. I mentioned Silverstone already, and Rob, you mentioned the Brazil weekend as a whole. Those were epically good to watch as a fan. So much so that my non-F1 fans, when we hang out, my friends and I will hang out, and they'll say, "What, how was the race?" I'll say, "Oh man, let me show you the British GP, the last 10 laps," and we'll put it on, and they will enjoy it. So I thought it was just a great year. I had a lot of fun as a whole. I won't talk about Australia, France, Mexico, and Abu Dhabi because those 4 were snooze fests. But I'll leave it at that, and I'm going to turn it to Pit Lane Paul. What were some of the funny things for you this year, or favorite races, or least favorites? We've heard about France from you a couple times. Did you like that one?
Yeah, France is, it's probably the best race. Just quickly, Abu Dhabi as well. I think all the hype of last year, everyone got a little bit excited by it. God, it was awful. For me, look, I'm really going to alienate the American audience here, but I'm going to quickly defend myself on the back of it. I have to go for Martin Brundle's grid walk at the Miami Grand Prix because it was just comedy gold. And
Patrick. No, that's not.
But it was like, the thing is, you've got this guy who is an old guy. Martin, he's a lovely guy, but he's an old guy. He isn't really going to know. So how it works is he has somebody in his ear telling him, like, no, who's on the grid at that time. So I always go, if I have anyone on the grid, I go to Martin and say, look, dude, I have this person on the grid. If you come by, this is who it is. Just to give him a bit of a helping hand because, so Miami was just sort of like, you saw this man, and this is how bad it is. This is defense of Martin right now. He had like 2 basketball players on the grid, and like I wouldn't even know who they are if they walked into my house now, sat in my living room, and started watching Gogglebox, which you probably wouldn't have in America. I wouldn't have a clue who these people were. Like, so you have to understand that outside of America, not a lot of people know who's on the grid. But I also then gonna go to America. And I don't think American people really understand quite how big F1 is globally. So, and I also don't understand that when Martin Brundle's doing the grid walk, probably 90% of the coverage of the world's Formula One is that Sky feed. So they are going around all over the world. I have his name. I researched this earlier on. It's an Italian guy, so I'm going to clear you boys straight away. It's Gianluca Vacchi or somebody like that. He was the guy who said, I am a social media sensation. When Martin asked who he was.
I remember that guy. What was his name? His name again. That was great.
It's Gianluca Vacchi or someone like that. And that for me was my funniest. It was just Martin's. And very modest as well. And I just love that. I love that grid walk. And I will say this, having been on the grid several times, being on a grid is a ridiculous privilege. Only a chosen few get to go on a grid for an F1 race. It's, you can't just walk on there. You need special passes, special accreditation. And if you go to the grid, it's a huge honor. So for these people to go on there, and half of them have got no clue why they're on the grid or what the grid's all about. So yeah, for me, that was just brilliant because the world was watching these people making absolute fools of themselves. It was just sort of like, me and Martin have had several beers afterwards. I always bring it up, and he just giggles.
Please tell him. So the Miami one, when he thought someone in his ear told him it was Patrick Mahomes, and it was not. It was Paulo Banchero, who was a rookie. I'm a big basketball fan. Okay, I didn't know who that was. He was not drafted yet out of Duke. I don't even know what team he's on today. I should know that. But you could put me out there, and I would have known it wasn't Patrick Mahomes, but I wouldn't have known who he was. So tell Martin, like sports fans in the U.S. were similarly confused, and he just got stuck in front of the camera.
Do you know what? I'm not. Okay. I have a few celebrity friends, I guess, but I don't know 90% of famous people I see in the paddock. I couldn't tell you who they are. We had Brad Pitt in a race. Where were we?
We were somewhere, but it was funny because the press didn't cover it at all, and Crofty didn't man crush over Brad Pitt all weekend.
Yeah, see, he came and sat in our hospitality, and I looked at him. I just saw like, oh god, is that actor guy? And I was like, yeah, Brad Pitt. I went, oh, was that him? I thought it was something completely different. Like,
Oh my God.
And there's the soundbite for the week.
No, the soundbite for the week is already eating what sits in his pants on the.
Yeah. I swear this guy comes on hospitality. I was like, I recognise him. So yeah, it's Brad Pitt. So I knew he was there. And I was like, oh, was that Brad Pitt? Oh God, I thought it was something completely different. Like,
Oh my
so,
gosh, Paul.
Yeah. No, honestly, you see these people all the time, and to be in a in robbery, you don't know how amazing it is to actually, you remember in Austin. It's so hard to even get anyone in the paddock when you're just dealing with normal passes, and now you have a media pass. It's sensational, but to even be in a paddock is a massive privilege. To go to the grid, like, is the most ridiculous honor you can ever have. And these people just had no clue why they were there. So I'm going to go Miami. Absolute funniest moment.
Yeah, that was the one place that was the one place I couldn't get into. They were just like, nope, your pass does not get you onto the grid. I'm like, okay, I'll hang out here.
What was your funniest moment, Rob?
So I mean, Latifi going the wrong way in Japan. Like we mentioned it before. I mean, Paul, have you ever seen that happen before?
No, going back not so long back, I'm pretty sure it was Interlagos. Kimi Räikkönen went off into the gravel trap. And I don't know where he went, but he managed to find a road behind the crash barrier that he started driving up, trying to find his way back onto the track. I might have dreamt this, but I'm pretty sure it happened. Like, it was
I heard about that one too.
Why? Oh, it's true. Yeah, good. So sometimes if you get a little bit mental. But yeah, no, not like that. Not
that was just like that was blatant. That was just like
exactly. And the excuse, something's wrong with the car. Like, dude,
the Williams GPS is off today.
But also, so I mean, not so much funny, but just like classic, Danny Rick doing the finger gun down the straight.
Yes.
Before he passed, I think Ocon, when he was on that tear on the soft tires in Mexico. Like, yeah, that's just classic Danny Rick. Like, here we go. Yeah.
The finger gun was great when they showed that back. Actually, there were a lot through the year. Didn't Fernando have a couple times when someone would cut him off and he'd do one of these with his hands as he'd go by the guy? And I loved it. Wasn't it? It was Spa, right? When he and Lewis tangled and Alonso came out with. What an idiot! I love that kind of stuff. So,
yeah,
I
would
finger
say,
guns. I forgot about that.
When the guys are in the car, the emotions are running really high. So it's one of my favorite pastimes. And if you ever I'm sure you've done it. I'm pretty sure you've done it. But if you get the chance, go on YouTube. Just go Kimi Räikkönen's best radio moments, and it is just a catalogue of laughter. I promise you. But in the car, they come out with such stuff which it makes me laugh. The in-car audio of a lot of drivers because they never mean it. They never mean it. They're just in the heat of the moment. So yeah, no, I agree. It's been a funny year.
So mine actually isn't in a car. My funniest moment of the year is Vettel driving back on the scooter. That was, I know he got fined for it. I know he probably shouldn't have done it and shouldn't have been doing it. But watching Seb drive back on that scooter was hilarious. And I'm going to sneak a bonus second one in. Also one of the funniest things all year. And it was on our show, not necessarily Formula One, but when our good friend Andy Ellis hit us up with the Sandwich Rant remix.
Oh, fantastic.
That I was laughing for days. I was giggling like a kid when I was sending it over to Brian, saying, Brian, you got to listen to this. We've got to play it on the show. I mean, Andy, you're a genius and you've done us a solid a couple of times now. But it still disappoints me that we haven't got Lando to come out and be seen on YouTube playing it. But it's out there, guys.
Maybe he'll put it on one of his DJ sets.
I was going to say, going back to disappointing moments that Rob mentioned earlier on, the FIA. I mean, fining Vettel for doing that on a scooter. You were just at that point. You're like, the world's gone mad. Like, there's nobody in F1 who thought he should be fined. Everyone just thought, what a legend. Like, it was proper good.
Yeah, they had the whole jewelry thing with the FIA this year.
Oh yeah, that's a great point as well.
Yeah, but I did. I loved watching Seb on that scooter. Right, time is creeping up on us, guys, so we will need to close this out. And we are going to close this out with, I think as Brian wrote it in our pre-show notes, was way too early predictions for 2023. So we're going to all go out there and put some way too early predictions because we haven't even seen anything happen yet. The season's only just finished, but screw it. We're the dirty side. We're going to go for some predictions. So anybody fancy going first on their 2023 predictions?
Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton.
Ooh.
Now, constructor and a driver? Is that how I take that, or did you just name two names?
Absolutely, yeah. No,
Okay.
constructor and driver.
Wow.
Ooh, okay, so I'm going to jump in because I had written down on my little pad here, I had George Mercedes. So I'm with you, Paul. I got this funny feeling we're going to see Rise of the Merc again next year, but I've got a funny little feeling about George, Mr. Consistent. Come on, one of you two now. What's the next
Reed,
crazy one?
Mr. Reed,
Go on, Mr. Reed.
I mean, I don't actually have like a crazy prediction about a result. My prediction is actually that like Logan Sargent is going to be bigger than anybody actually realizes, right? Like just in terms of like we haven't had an American on the grid in a long time, right? And the sport of Formula One has become massively popular in America despite that. Right? Like that's a huge hurdle to overcome. Like you don't actually have any Americans to root for, yet it's become a big, and of course he's driving for Williams. He's a rookie. He's not going to, he'll be lucky if he scores a couple points. Right. But America is going to rally around this kid. Right. And we're going to actually have somebody to root for every weekend on the grid. And I mean, you just cannot underestimate, when America really embraces a sport. I've been trying to warn old school F1 fans about this for a while. Like you just gonna have to prepare yourselves for America to really embrace Formula One. It's going to change your sport, and you might not like it.
If only the last American that I remember because of his name was actually any good on the track. So Scott Speed had the best name ever, but. Do you think they'll be patient? Do you think the fans will be patient in the US? Because, like you said, actually, two things. One, you can't get away with not doing a crazy prediction. So you are going to predict now the highest finish for Sargent next season. And then you can answer my second part, which is that
in a Williams still.
In a Williams, what's his highest position going to be? You can say 20 if you want. But will your US audience be patient with him because he's not instantly winning every race?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because again, Drive to Survive has trained the audience to, really just kind of get into the story of the team and the drivers and really appreciate that and know that like they're not all working with equal equipment, right? So like the expectation of winning, just isn't there. They just want to see their personalities. They want to, see them out driving their car, beating their teammate, right? So he's got a very good teammate, obviously. And so, I mean, I think he'll get a random P10 next year.
Ooh, he's going to get a point. He's going to get a point next year. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
So now I'm nervous because my prediction was two parts. I have a real prediction, but I wanted to talk about the friction amongst the teams. 40% of the teams I'm predicting massive teammate friction. And Rob, as you just mentioned, the Americanization aspect of some of F1. Now I'm worried people are going to put those two things together and think it was us. It wasn't us. This is coming on anyway. So, here's some exammples of what to expect. Things
Once
like this.
again, most unsportive driver of the grid. Yeah.
I mean, those are teammates. That doesn't go away.
Yeah, it shows who he really is.
Those are teammates. That doesn't go away. And this guy, who is mercurial, as we just heard, he's going to be teammates with the owner's son. So those are three teams I promise will have some drama in it. And we didn't even talk about Alpine because I have no sounds for those guys. They don't like each other to start with. So I count four teams: Haas, Red Bull, Alpine, and I'm calling Aston Martin early. It doesn't exist yet. I'm making that one up, where you're going to have teammate drama. And my one prediction for the year is Lando will do far better than 7th in the Drivers' Championship and will be the biggest surprise move up the list of Drivers' Championship. I actually have him in 4th, which is crazy.
So between us, we have got 2 votes for Mercedes to win the Constructors, 1 vote for Lewis to win it, 1 for George. We've got Logan Sargent coming in with a point in 10th, and Lando abandoning 7th and rising higher.
Yes.
Okay.
Any progress in the McLaren is going to just put him off like a rocket ship.
I would say Logan Sargent coming in is fantastic for the American audience because I totally agree. To have what we got, is it 3 races American next year or 4?
Yep.
3. God, how bad's that? Yeah, 3 races American next year, and to not have an American driver is crazy. So yeah, I think that's huge. Driver rivalries, Look, honestly, I wouldn't buy too much into that. Like I said, it's a lot of heat on track is heat on track. Uh, I don't know. I agree with you, Brian. There were some interesting ones, but look, when the guys are out there competing, it happens. I've only ever seen it once in my lifetime. Real driver rivalry and dislike. That was Nico and Lewis. Apart from that, Sergio in Max, I don't think that's really that much of a thing. It was at Hulkenberg in Magnussen. Yeah, there's a lot of history there. It's gonna be fun. I'd like to hear drivers get riled up. I think it makes great viewing, and it does make me laugh when they start digging into each other. But yeah, they did the driver team dinner in Abu Dhabi, and I was there with Valtteri for that for small sections. And they all secretly get on. They're all laughing and joking. They're all sat at the table laughing at each other. Stories going round. So again, Rob Reed, you are the guilty party. The media make so much more of this than it actually is. So yeah.
Gotta drive those
right. Right. We're going to have to wrap this one up. We could carry on talking and probably make 2 episodes out of this, but I think Paul, more than anybody, probably deserves the time off now, right? You've had like an insane amount, whatever it's been, 8 months traveling a gazillion miles across the globe, and it's finally all done. You're home, feet up for Christmas. When will everything start again for you? Because obviously it starts for proper in March. When's testing? When are we going to start seeing some cars on tracks for next year?
Your car launches will normally be around the let's say 10th to the 15th of February is normally a good time. You'll start seeing the new liveries coming out. Testing is the latter end of February, just a 3-day test in Bahrain and straight into the race. For me personally, my next event with Valtteri is the Race of Champions in Sweden. That's the end of January, which is a fantastic event. But I can come on before that and go through what the Race of Champions is, because that's quite a funny event. But no, totally. Look, the next few weeks, Christmas, New Year, get into January, start to lose this beer fat that I've acquired over the latter end of the year. But no, it's been a great season and it's been fun. And I echo what I said last week about you guys. Keep doing this. It's entertaining. And even Vale's Tales, when I listened to some of them, there's a lot of stuff in there which I don't know. I'm not an oracle of F1, so keep doing this. Keep going with this sort of stuff. And they always say never meet your heroes, which I've learned tonight when I asked Brian for a stat early on and he couldn't deliver it. So I think for you personally, Brian, like over Christmas, and if you can just go and research, don't leave me hanging like that. That'll be good.
I'll do better next time.
Yeah. And then Rob Reed, you'll be pleased that in January the bike is coming out again. I've got to get the bike out. So remember the middle of the year I had the Colorado biking events. That's where me and Rob first met. Where he's a pretty good cyclist, whereas me. I've got to get some training in because I can't. Next year's gonna be a lot of fun. I got a few more events. So listen, guys, as always, you're super. Please keep doing what you're doing, and thanks for everything. Thanks for the song. Thanks for all the fun you've given to all of your audience. It's been fascinating and brilliant.
I'm gonna cry now, I think. But
that's the soppiest thing I've ever said.
I might cut all of that out and it's part of the edit at the end. But no, I appreciate everything you've done all year for us. From your, like you said, that song wrote itself when I read the lyrics, because the travel facts are just amazing. If once you leave F1, if you want to join some sort of travel show, I think you've got a career there, because that was fantastic. And also thanks to you, Rob, because you've been a big champion of ours as well. We've had we've had our name published in Forbes, which is insane. So what's up for you next? A bit of rest and relaxation before you hit the new year, or what's going on in the world of Mr. Reed?
Well, yeah, it's kind of interesting that the cycling season ends, then the F1 season ends, then the snowboard season starts. Ooh. So just going to be basically snowboarding in between those seasons. We're getting a lot of snow here in Park City coming up, so that's what I'll be doing for the next few months.
You going to break your hand again, or are you going to survive?
No. Gonna stay healthy. I'm not even gonna knock on wood. Yeah.
That's excellent. Well, Rob and I will still be here every week talking about F1, and all the Dirty Side listeners can continue checking us out. We've got a lot planned for the off season, but I'd be remiss if I also didn't say thanks to Rob and Paul for joining us, not just today, but through the season. We've really appreciated it more than you guys know, and it's so much fun talking about something we love so much with people who know about it. So both of you guys, seriously, thank you. Much appreciated.
Pleasure.
So I think that's time to wrap this one up. And like Brian said, we will be back. We might be doing some smaller episodes just to keep abreast of anything that's going on news and social-wise. We've got some other things up our sleeves as well for episodes. But other than that, yeah, like Brian said, thanks very much for coming on, guys. And we'll speak to you all next week.